The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mix of languages, pheromone clouds, and electromagnetic static that passed for civilized discourse among the 12-member species. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak hegemony adjusted his ceremonial scales and prepared to address what he considered the most ridiculous proposal in the Council's 3,000-year history. Honored colleagues, Zektar began, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had ruled star systems when most others were still crawling out of primordial ooze. We gather today to discuss the humans' request for membership in our esteemed organization. I find myself amused by their audacity. A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. The crystalline hierarchy's representative chimed like broken glass, while the gas-form Netheri pulsed with colors that roughly translated to contemptuous laughter. Only Ambassador Chun-Wei sat motionless at the human delegation's modest table, her dark eyes fixed on Zektar with the patience of someone who had heard such speeches before. Let us examine the facts, Zektar continued, warming to his theme. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They possess exactly 17 star systems, most of them barely habitable rocks they've somehow convinced themselves are worth colonizing. And yet, they come before us claiming they deserve a seat among species that have ruled galaxies for millennia. The Quellian delegate, a being that resembled a walking tree made of silver metal, spoke with a voice like grinding gears. Their military capabilities are particularly quaint. Single-hulled vessels with chemical propulsion systems. Kinetic weapons that fire metal slugs. It's almost endearing, like watching children play with toys. Ambassador Chen finally stood, her movements economical and precise. She was unremarkable by human standards, average height, middle-aged, wearing a simple blue diplomatic uniform. But there was something in her bearing that made several of the alien delegates unconsciously lean back. Honored members, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber without any electronic amplification. The Terran Federation appreciates your candid assessment of our capabilities. We do not dispute that we are young compared to your ancient civilizations. We do not claim technological superiority over species that were building Dyson spheres when our ancestors were discovering fire. Zektar's scales rustled with satisfaction. At least the humans had the good sense to acknowledge their inferiority. However, Chen continued, we would like to propose a simple demonstration. A test, if you will, of whether humanity's contributions to galactic civilization might have value despite our apparent limitations. The Vorthak ambassador's elongated head tilted in what might have been curiosity or condescension. What sort of demonstration? Your records indicate that the Kythera Syndicate has been problematic for some time, Chen said, consulting a small tablet. Pirates and raiders operating from the Void Nebula, hitting trade routes throughout the outer spiral. Your combined fleets have been unable to eliminate this threat for over 50 standard years. The Syndicate's leader, one Vax the Render, has become something of a legend. His ship, the Bloodfang, has never been successfully engaged by any Council fleet. Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. The Kythera problem was a source of considerable embarrassment for the Council. The pirates used modified stealth technology stolen from a dozen different species, making their ships nearly impossible to track. They struck fast, took what they wanted, and vanished back into the nebula's sensor-jamming interference before any response could be mounted. The Syndicate has recently escalated their activities, Chun continued calmly. Last month they raided the Quellian medical convoy, stealing supplies intended for plague victims on Nymos 7. 3 weeks ago they hit a Vorthak diplomatic transport, taking Ambassador Krexul's nephew for ransom. Yesterday, they attacked a civilian passenger liner carrying families to the new colonies. The chamber stirred uneasily. Everyone knew about these incidents, but hearing them listed so matter-of-factly was uncomfortable. The Terran Federation would like permission to resolve this situation, Chen said simply. The crystalline representative's harmonic laughter filled the air. You? Your primitive fleet couldn't catch a Syndicate scout ship, let alone penetrate the Void Nebula and eliminate their base of operations. Chen smiled, and several delegates felt a chill they couldn't quite explain. We wouldn't use our fleet. Then what? Zektar demanded. Your merchant marine? Your diplomatic corps? One ship, Chen replied. One ship, with a volunteer crew. If we succeed in eliminating the Kythera Syndicate within 1 standard month, the Council will grant humanity full membership. If we fail, she shrugged, then you'll have lost nothing except the entertainment value of watching us try. The chamber erupted in discussion. The proposal was so absurd it bordered on insulting. One human ship against the most successful pirate organization in known space? It was either supreme arrogance or elaborate suicide. Ambassador Threx of the Mollusk Confederation spoke for the first time, her translated voice bubbling with amusement. And what class of vessel did you have in mind for this demonstration? A courier ship, Chen answered. Single-hulled, minimal armor, standard human armament. Nothing that would give us an unfair advantage. The laughter that filled the chamber was genuinely amused rather than mocking. Even the most diplomatic members couldn't help themselves. The mental image of a human courier ship, essentially a flying delivery truck, taking on the Bloodfang, and its escorts was beyond ridiculous. Zektar raised a clawed hand for silence. Very well, Ambassador Chun. Your species' capacity for self-delusion is remarkable, but if you wish to demonstrate your limitations so dramatically, the Council has no objection. You have 1 standard month. When your ship fails to return, we will send appropriate condolences to your government, and consider your application permanently withdrawn. Agreed, Chen said immediately. We will begin immediately. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, discussing this unprecedented display of human foolishness, none of them noticed the small smile playing at the corners of Ambassador Chen's mouth. Nor did they see her activate a secure communication device and send a single, coded message to a location nowhere in any official records. The message was brief: package delivery authorized. Full rules of engagement. Baba Yaga protocol approved. Far from the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Council, in a region of space that didn't appear on any star charts, a ship received that transmission. It was not a courier vessel, despite what Ambassador Chen had told the Council. It was something else entirely. The ship was old by human standards, nearly 40 years since its keel was laid. Its hull bore no markings, no registry numbers, nothing to indicate its origin or purpose. It looked like countless other vessels that plied the space lanes, blocky, functional, unremarkable. A ship designed to be forgotten the moment it left your visual field. But appearances, as the Galactic Council was about to learn, could be deceiving. Captain Sarah Voss read the transmission twice before deleting it from the ship's memory banks. At 63, she was officially retired from active service, her military record sealed under classifications that would remain secret long after her death. The crew didn't know her real name, her real history, or what she'd done during the border wars that had ended 20 years ago. They didn't need to know. What they did know was that Captain Voss had never lost a ship, never left a mission incomplete, and never asked them to do anything she wouldn't do herself. For the men and women who served aboard the vessel they simply called the Witch, that was enough. Well? Asked Marcus Kane, the ship's first officer, studying the captain's face for clues. Kane was young for his position, barely 30, but he'd earned his place through competence rather than connections. Like most of the crew, his past contained chapters he preferred to keep closed. Council's given us a hunting license, Voss said simply. Time to earn our keep. The bridge was smaller than those found on most military vessels, cramped and efficient rather than impressive. Every surface served multiple purposes. Every system had been modified and upgraded countless times by hands that understood that space was an environment that killed the careless, the slow, and the unlucky. Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez looked up from her console, where streams of data that would have baffled most technicians flowed like water. What's the target, Skipper? Kythera Syndicate, Voss replied. Full package. The bridge fell silent. Even among people accustomed to impossible missions, this was ambitious. The Syndicate wasn't just another criminal organization. They were ghosts who struck without warning and vanished without trace. Their leader, Vax the Render, had built a reputation that made seasoned military officers wake up in cold sweats. Rules of engagement? Asked Lieutenant Commander Alex Novak, the tactical officer. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who'd learned not to question orders, no matter how insane they seemed. Captain Voss looked around the bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes in turn. These were her people, volunteers all, bound together by shared secrets and mutual trust rather than regulations and rank structure. They'd followed her through situations that had no names in any tactical manual, and they'd all made it home. Baba Yaga rules, she said quietly. If the bridge had been silent before, it became absolutely still now. Baba Yaga rules meant no prisoners, no survivors, no evidence. It meant that when they were done, there would be nothing left but empty space and unanswered questions. It meant that the monsters who preyed on innocent people were about to discover that sometimes the universe sent bigger monsters to hunt them down. Navigator Sophie Chun, no relation to the ambassador, pulled up star charts on her console. Void Nebula's a big place, Captain. Could take weeks just to find them. Won't need weeks, Voss replied, settling into her command chair. The worn leather creaked familiarly under her weight, and her hands found the armrest controls without conscious thought. Elena, bring the special systems online. Marcus, signal the crew for departure prep. Alex, warm up the toys. Aye, Captain, came the unanimous response. As the ship that wasn't really a courier vessel powered up systems that didn't appear in any technical manual, its crew began preparations for a mission that would either cement humanity's place among the stars or serve as an object lesson in the dangers of overconfidence. None of them were worried about failure. They'd been training for this moment for years, and their ship carried capabilities that would have surprised even Ambassador Chun. The Galactic Council expected humans to fail because they judged humanity by the standards of civilized, reasonable people. They had no experience dealing with the kind of humans who volunteered for ships like this one. The kind who'd spent decades learning to fight wars that couldn't be won through conventional means. The kind who understood that sometimes the only way to deal with monsters was to become something worse. The Kythera Syndicate was about to discover that their reputation for ruthlessness meant nothing to people who'd already been to hell and made themselves comfortable there. They'd built their empire on fear and violence, convinced that superior technology and numbers made them untouchable. They were about to learn why ancient human cultures told stories about creatures like the Baba Yaga, and why those stories were always cautionary tales about what happened to those who hurt innocent people. In the depths of the Void Nebula, Vax the Render sat in his command throne aboard the Bloodfang, reviewing reports from his latest raids. The ship around him hummed with stolen technology from a dozen different species, weapons, and defenses that made him effectively untouchable. He ruled his pirates through fear and shared greed, and his empire had grown fat on the blood of those too weak to defend themselves. He had no idea that somewhere in the dark between the stars, death was coming for him. Death in the form of a ship that looked harmless, crewed by people who'd made a career of the impossible, commanded by a woman whose service record was classified so far above top secret that most governments didn't know it existed. The Galactic Council thought they were watching humanity's humiliation. Instead, they were about to witness the birth of a legend that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The hunt was about to begin. The Void Nebula stretched across 17 light-years of space like a cancer, its purple and black clouds hiding secrets that most civilized species preferred to forget. The nebula's unique electromagnetic properties made conventional scanning impossible, creating perfect hiding spots for those who lived outside galactic law. For 50 years, the Kythera Syndicate had used these shadows to build an empire of fear and blood. Captain Voss studied the tactical display as her ship glided silently through the nebula's outer edges. The vessel's modified sensors, invisible to conventional detection methods, painted a picture that would have terrified any normal crew. Asteroid bases, hidden shipyards, weapon platforms disguised as space debris. The Syndicate had turned the entire nebula into a fortress. 16 major installations, reported Navigator Chun, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. At least 200 ships of various classes, plus mining operations on 47 asteroids. Conservative estimate puts their total forces at around 8,000 personnel. Chief Engineer Vasquez whistled softly from her station. That's not a pirate crew, that's a small nation. Nations have rules, Captain Voss replied without looking away from her display. These are just predators who got organized. The ship continued its silent approach, systems running in complete stealth mode. External hull temperature matched the surrounding space, energy emissions were masked by the nebula's natural interference, and their modified drive left no detectable wake. They were ghosts in the machine, invisible to everything except the most sophisticated military sensors, and the Syndicate relied on stolen civilian technology. Captain, Tactical Officer Novak spoke carefully. I'm reading defensive networks that would give a Council battle fleet serious problems. They've got overlapping sensor grids, automated weapon platforms, and what looks like a modified Quellian gravitic minefield. Voss nodded. Standard pirate tactics. Build a fortress, make yourself too expensive to dig out, negotiate from a position of strength. She paused, studying the data. Elena, how long to implement the Rasputin protocol? The chief engineer's fingers danced across her console, pulling up schematics that existed nowhere in official databases. Give me 6 hours for full deployment, Captain. But once we start, there's no going back. There was never any going back, Voss replied. This ends here, one way or another. Marcus Kane leaned forward in his chair, studying the tactical projection with the eye of someone who'd spent years learning to find weaknesses in impossible situations. Skipper, even with our advantages, this is going to be messy. They've got enough firepower to glass a planet. Only if they can use it, Voss said simply. Sophie, plot me a course to Installation 7. Alex, I want full tactical analysis of their communication networks. Elena, begin Rasputin deployment. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each understanding their role in a plan that existed only in their captain's mind. They'd learned long ago that Sarah Voss didn't explain her strategies until they were already in motion, partly for security, partly because most of her plans sounded insane until you saw them work. Installation 7 was a converted asteroid, honeycombed with docking bays and crew quarters. It served as a way station for Syndicate ships moving between the nebula and their hunting grounds, typically housing around 300 pirates and their support staff. What made it special was its position at the center of the Syndicate's communication network. As their ship approached the installation, moving at barely more than drifting speed, Engineer Vasquez worked at her console with the focus of a surgeon performing brain surgery. The Rasputin protocol was her masterwork, a piece of hybrid human-alien technology that pushed the boundaries of what was theoretically possible. Deployment complete, she reported after what felt like hours. All packages are in position and awaiting activation. Captain Voss studied the installation through the ship's passive sensors. Lights moved in the docking bays, ships came and went in the endless business of organized crime. None of them had any idea they were being watched by something that shouldn't exist. Alex, signal analysis? Got it, Captain. They're using a modified Vorthack military protocol, probably stolen during a raid 5 years ago. Encryption's solid, but the network architecture has some interesting vulnerabilities. Enough to get us inside their communications? Novak's smile was predatory. Give me 30 minutes, and I'll have them sending birthday cards to their mothers. While Novak worked his magic on the Syndicate's communication systems, the ship maintained its vigil. They were close enough to count the rivets on the installation's hull, yet remained completely invisible to the pirate's sensors. It was like being a shark in dark water, studying prey that had no idea death was circling just beyond their vision. The breakthrough came exactly 28 minutes later. I'm in, Novak announced quietly. Full access to their internal communications, logistics networks, and tactical databases. They're not going to like what I found. Captain Voss turned to face him. Show me. The main display shifted to show a detailed breakdown of Syndicate operations. Personnel rosters, ship movements, cargo manifests, everything needed to understand how the organization functioned. But it was the personal files that made the bridge fall silent. Slave markets. Medical experimentation on captured civilians. Something called recreational hunting that involved releasing prisoners on uninhabited planets and tracking them for sport. Video logs of torture sessions conducted for entertainment rather than information. Navigator Chen turned away from her console, her face pale. My God, Captain, these aren't pirates. They're monsters, Voss finished. Which makes this easier. She activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We've confirmed the nature of our target. What we're dealing with isn't just criminal. It's an offense against everything decent in the galaxy. The Galactic Council thinks we're here to prove humanity's worth. They're wrong. We're here to prove that some things don't deserve to exist. A pause then. Elena, activate Rasputin. Alex, begin the information warfare package. Sophie, bring us to attack position Alpha. Marcus, signal all crew for combat stations. Captain, came the response. But now there was something different in the voices. The crew had seen the files, understood what they were really fighting. This wasn't about politics or membership in the Galactic Council anymore. This was about extermination. The Rasputin Protocol began its work silently, microscopic devices spreading through Installation 7's infrastructure like a technological plague. Within minutes, they had infiltrated every system: life support, communications, weapons, even the coffee makers in the crew quarters. And they waited, dormant, for the signal that would bring them to deadly life. Novak's information warfare package was more subtle, but no less devastating. False orders began appearing in the Syndicate's communication networks. Ships were redirected to empty coordinates. Supply convoys were sent to abandoned systems. Most critically, security protocols were quietly altered to create blind spots in their defensive networks. Captain, Chen reported from her station, I'm detecting increased traffic from the main base. Looks like they're getting confused by the conflicting orders. Good. Confusion leads to mistakes, and mistakes get people killed. Voss studied the tactical display, where the Syndicate's carefully orchestrated operations were beginning to show signs of strain. How long before they figure out they've been compromised? Depends on how paranoid they are, Novak replied. Could be hours, could be days. But once they start looking, they'll find traces. They won't have time to look, Voss said. Elena, status on the primary targets? All packages deployed and confirmed active, Captain. Just say the word. The main display showed the locations of 17 separate installations throughout the nebula, each one now infected with microscopic agents of destruction. 50 years of criminal empire, reduced to a target list on a tactical display. Any regrets? Voss asked her crew, giving them one final chance to voice doubts about what they were about to do. Only that we can't kill them twice, Marcus replied, speaking for everyone on the bridge. Captain Voss nodded and reached for the activation control. In stories, this would be the moment for a dramatic speech about justice and retribution. But these weren't people who dealt in dramatics. They were professionals who understood that some jobs required a personal touch. Rasputin Protocol, full activation. Authorization Voss Alpha 7. Throughout the Void Nebula, in 17 different installations, microscopic devices received their final instructions and began to work. What happened next would later be classified as equipment malfunction in official reports, but the truth was far more precise and devastating. The devices didn't explode or release toxins. Instead, they simply stopped certain critical systems from working. Life support recyclers ceased operating. Gravity generators shut down. Most importantly, the seals on dozens of internal bulkheads quietly opened, exposing entire sections to the vacuum of space. The beauty of the Rasputin Protocol was its selectivity. Only installations with confirmed Syndicate personnel were affected. The automated mining platforms continued operating normally. The communication relays remained functional. Even the occasional civilian prisoner found their cells mysteriously unlocked, their life support functioning perfectly while everything around them fell apart. Installation 7 died first, its lights going out section by section as the nebula's vacuum claimed rooms full of pirates who'd never expected their fortress to become their tomb. Within minutes, 300 criminals who'd spent years terrorizing innocent people simply ceased to exist. The other installations followed quickly. Some tried to send distress signals, but their communications had been selectively disabled. Others attempted to abandon ship, only to discover their escape pods had been programmed to malfunction. A few managed to get weapons online and began firing blindly into space, adding their own destruction to the chaos. 15 installations confirmed dark, Chen reported, her voice clinical despite the magnitude of what they'd just accomplished. 2 showing partial function, but life support is failing. No distress signals detected. What about their mobile fleet? Voss asked. Novak consulted his displays. Scattered across 3 systems, chasing false orders. By the time they figure out what happened and return, there won't be anything left to return to. And Vax. The Bloodfang is currently investigating reports of a phantom task force in the Kepler system. Should take them at least 18 hours to realize they're chasing shadows. Captain Voss allowed herself a small smile. Then, it's time for the personal touch. Sophie, plot a course for Kepler. Alex, prepare the special package for delivery to our primary target. As their ship turned away from the dying installation and headed deeper into space, the crew began preparations for the final phase of their mission. The Rasputin Protocol had eliminated the Syndicate's infrastructure and most of their personnel, but the real prize still awaited them. Vax the Render had built his reputation on being untouchable, too clever to be caught, too dangerous to be challenged. For decades, he'd raided and murdered his way across the galaxy, always staying one step ahead of justice. But Vax had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that justice would come in the form of council battle fleets and civilized warfare. He'd prepared for conventional enemies following conventional rules. He hadn't prepared for something like the crew of the ship that bore no name, commanded by a woman whose service record was buried so deep that most governments didn't know she'd ever existed. He hadn't prepared for people who understood that some problems could only be solved by those willing to become temporary monsters. The hunt for the Bloodfang was about to begin, and when it ended, the galaxy would understand that humanity brought something new to the cosmic community, the concept of total war against those who chose to prey on the innocent. The Galactic Council expected humans to fail. Instead, they were about to witness the birth of a nightmare that would haunt criminal organizations for generations to come. The Bloodfang hung in space like a mechanical predator, its hull scarred by decades of violence and modified with technology stolen from a dozen different species. At 3 kilometers long, it was more mobile fortress than ship, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust and shields that had turned aside the concentrated fire of entire council battle groups. On the bridge, Vax the Render studied the empty space where his sensors insisted a council task force should be waiting. His species, the Kythera, were natural predators, evolved from pack hunters on a world where anything that couldn't fight died young. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws and skin that could deflect small arms' fire, Vax was intimidating even by Kythera standards. "Nothing, Lord Vax," reported his sensor operator, a nervous Quellian who'd joined the Syndicate to escape prosecution for war crimes. "Long-range scans show empty space. Either our intelligence was wrong, or they've pulled back." Vax's 4 eyes narrowed as he considered the possibilities. In 50 years of raiding, he'd developed instincts that had kept him alive when lesser pirates died. Those instincts were screaming warnings now, even though his instruments showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. "Communication status?" he growled. "Still intermittent, Lord. We lost contact with Base 7 4 hours ago, and the relay stations aren't responding to direct queries. Could be nebula interference, or..." The sentence hung unfinished. Everyone on the bridge knew there was another possibility, one that no one wanted to voice. After 50 years of seeming invincibility, the Syndicate might finally have encountered something capable of hurting them. "Signal the fleet," Vax ordered. "All ships return to the nebula immediately. Maximum burn, combat formation." As his orders went out, the Kythera leader settled back in his command throne and tried to shake the feeling that he was being watched. Space was vast and empty. His ship's sensors were the best stolen technology could provide, and nothing in the galaxy could approach the Bloodfang undetected. He was wrong on all counts. 50,000 kilometers away, close enough to count the weapon ports on the pirate flagship's hull, Captain Sarah Voss watched her prey through sensors that existed nowhere in any technical manual. Her ship maintained perfect silence, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to every known form of detection. "Target confirmed," she said quietly. "Vax is aboard, along with approximately 2,000 crew members. Ship analysis indicates heavy modifications, stolen Vorthack shields, crystalline weapons, Netheri propulsion. It's a flying museum of galactic military technology. All stolen from the people they murdered to get it," Marcus Kane observed, his voice carrying the cold anger that had sustained them through their impossible mission. Elena Vasquez looked up from her engineering console. I'm reading some interesting structural modifications, Captain. They've reinforced the hull in dozens of places, but the work was done by different shipyards using incompatible techniques. There are stress points throughout the superstructure. Weakness? Voss asked. More like opportunities. Give me a few minutes to run the calculations. While Elena worked, the rest of the crew made final preparations for what they all knew would be their most dangerous engagement. The Bloodfang wasn't just another pirate ship. It was a legend in its own right, commanded by someone who'd earned his reputation through 50 years of successful violence. Navigator Chin studied the tactical plot, where the Bloodfang's escort ships were beginning to form up for their return to the nebula. 16 vessels in the primary group, Captain. Mixed classes, but all heavily armed. If they reach the nebula's interference zone, we'll lose our sensor advantage. They won't reach it. Voss replied with the calm certainty that had carried her through situations that had no names in any manual. Alex, status on the personal delivery system? Tactical Officer Novak checked his displays. Locked and loaded, Captain. Though I still think this plan qualifies as completely insane. The best ones usually do. Voss activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In approximately 15 minutes, we will engage the Bloodfang and her escorts. Remember, we're not here to capture prisoners or preserve evidence. Our mission is elimination of a threat to galactic peace. Execute your duties with that in mind. She paused, then continued in a softer tone. For those who won't be coming home from this mission, know that what you're doing here will save thousands of innocent lives. The galaxy will be better for your sacrifice. The crew worked in focused silence, each understanding their role in a plan that would either end the Kythera Syndicate forever or destroy them all in the attempt. They were volunteers, every one of them, bound together by shared purpose rather than regulations or rank. Structural analysis complete, Elena announced. I've identified 17 critical stress points throughout the ship's hull. Concentrated fire at these locations should cause cascade failures in their armor system. Time to target engagement range. 11 minutes, assuming they maintain current course and speed. Voss nodded. Signal Phase 1. Weapons free. All systems to full combat status. Throughout the ship, systems that had been running in stealth mode suddenly came alive. Weapon ports that had been sealed opened to reveal guns that shouldn't exist. Shield generators that belonged on ships 10 times their size began drawing power from engines that produced far more energy than their specifications suggested possible. The vessel that had posed as a simple courier ship revealed its true nature, a weapon of war designed by people who understood that some fights couldn't be won by following conventional rules. Contact, Chen announced as their target's sensors finally detected the approaching ship. They're scanning us, attempting to identify our vessel class. Let them look, Voss replied. By the time they figure out what we are, it'll be too late to matter. On the Bloodfang's bridge, chaos was beginning to break out as the sensor operators tried to make sense of what their instruments were telling them. The approaching ship registered as a small courier vessel, but the energy readings suggested something far more dangerous. Lord Vax, the Quellian operator said, his voice tight with confusion. The approaching vessel is broadcasting no identification and not responding to our warnings. Energy signatures are inconsistent with stated vessel class. Vax's predatory instincts flared to full alert. In his experience, ships that didn't match their apparent specifications were usually either military vessels in disguise or traps waiting to be sprung. Either way, they represented danger. All ships, combat formation. Shields up, weapons online. If that courier doesn't identify itself in the next 2 minutes, we treat it as hostile. But the mysterious ship made the decision for them. At precisely the moment it entered weapons range, it opened fire with guns that should never have fit in such a small hull. The first salvo struck 3 of the escort vessels simultaneously, surgical strikes that penetrated their shields and crippled their engines without destroying them completely. The pirates found themselves dead in space, watching helplessly as the battle unfolded around them. Return fire, Vax roared, but his gunners were already trying to target a ship that moved like nothing they'd ever encountered. It twisted and spun through space with impossible agility, avoiding their weapons while delivering precisely aimed shots that seemed to know exactly where to hurt them most. Elena's structural analysis proved devastatingly accurate. Each shot from the mysterious attacker struck at the specific points where the Bloodfang's stolen modifications created weaknesses in its hull integrity. Armor plates that had withstood the fire of Council battle fleets began to buckle and fail under the concentrated assault. Shields down to 60%, reported the Bloodfang's weapons officer. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. They're targeting our structural weak points with impossible precision. Vax snarled and activated his ship's most powerful weapons, a collection of stolen military hardware that could reduce asteroids to dust. Full spread, all batteries. I want that ship turned into scrap metal. But when the energy cleared, the courier ship was still there, still moving, still firing. It had weathered a barrage that should have destroyed a heavy cruiser, and it didn't even seem damaged. Impossible, whispered the sensor operator. Those shields, they're not reading as any known technology. The truth was that the shields weren't any single known technology. They were a hybrid creation that combined the best defensive systems from 6 different species, modified and improved by engineers who'd spent decades learning to keep impossible ships alive in impossible situations. Lord Vax, came a panicked voice from the ship's communication station. I'm receiving reports from the home nebula. All installations, they're gone, sir. Everything. The entire base network has gone dark. For the first time in 50 years, Vax felt something he'd almost forgotten, fear. The approaching ship wasn't just another council patrol or military vessel. It was something else, something that had systematically destroyed his entire empire while he chased phantoms in empty space. Who are you? He transmitted on all frequencies. What do you want? The response came in clear, unaccented galactic standard, delivered in a woman's voice that carried no emotion whatsoever. I am Captain Sarah Voss of the Terran Federation. I am here to inform you that your organization's activities have been deemed incompatible with civilized existence. You have 10 seconds to surrender your vessel and submit to justice. Vax's 4 eyes blazed with fury. Surrender was not a concept that existed in Kythera culture, especially not to some upstart species that had barely discovered spaceflight. You're human, he laughed, the sound carrying across the communication channel like breaking glass. You pathetic primitives think you can challenge the Kythera Syndicate? I've been killing since before your species left their homeworld. 9 seconds, came the calm reply. I am Vax the Render. I have destroyed entire fleets. I have tortured council ambassadors for sport. I am Nightmare incarnate. 5 seconds. The Kythera leader realized with growing horror that the human wasn't impressed by his reputation, his ship, or his threats. She was counting down to something, and when she reached 0, very bad things were going to happen. 2 seconds. Final warning. Vax opened his mouth to deliver another threat, but the words died in his throat as every screen on his bridge suddenly displayed the same image, a human skull over crossed bones, with text in a dozen languages that all said the same thing. You have been judged. Then, the real attack began. The courier ship's weapons fire ceased abruptly, replaced by something far more terrifying. Small objects began launching from concealed ports, moving too fast for point defense systems to intercept. They struck the Bloodfang's hull and simply disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship's internal lights began flickering as systems throughout the vessel started failing in sequence. Not damaged, simply ceasing to function, as if they'd decided to stop working. Boarding pods, Elena had called them, though they were nothing like the clumsy assault shuttles used by conventional military forces. Each one was barely larger than a coffin, containing a single occupant in powered armor that incorporated technology from every major species in the galaxy. The pods didn't breach the hull in the traditional sense. Instead, they used molecular disruptors to create temporary openings, allowing their occupants to enter the ship without triggering hull breach alarms or emergency responses. What came through those openings were 24 individuals who represented humanity's answer to the galaxy's monsters. They moved through the ship's corridors like death itself, their modified armor allowing them to operate in any environment while their weapons could adapt to any threat. Vax tried to rally his crew, but the humans weren't fighting like any enemy he'd ever encountered. They didn't announce their presence with explosions or battle cries. They simply appeared, eliminated any threat in their immediate area, and moved on. No prisoners, no mercy, no hesitation. Within 30 minutes, the Bloodfang had become a tomb. 2,000 pirates who'd terrorized the galaxy for decades were simply gone, their lives ended by people who understood that some problems could only be solved through the complete elimination of the source. Vax himself died last, cornered in his own command center by a figure in black armor whose face he never saw. His final words were a question: "What are you?" The answer came in that same emotionless voice he'd heard over the communication channel. "I am the thing that comes in the dark for people like you. I am what humanity becomes when you hurt innocent people. I am Baba Yaga." When it was over, when the last pirate ship had been reduced to drifting wreckage and the last criminal had paid for 50 years of atrocities, Captain Voss stood on her bridge and surveyed the aftermath of the most complete military victory in recent galactic history. "Status report," she requested calmly. "All Syndicate vessels destroyed or disabled," Tactical Officer Novak reported. "No survivors detected. Their base network is completely eliminated, and all stolen cargo has been recovered for return to legitimate owners." "Casualties?" "None, Captain. All boarding teams returned safely." Voss nodded and activated the communication system that would carry her words to the Galactic Council chambers on Centauri Prime. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd just proven that humanity belonged among the stars. "Galactic Council, this is Captain Voss of the Terran Federation vessel. Baba Yaga. Mission complete. The Kythera Syndicate no longer exists. All stolen property has been recovered and is being transmitted to your custody. Request confirmation of humanity's acceptance into the Council as previously agreed." The response, when it came, was nearly incoherent. The Council members had been monitoring the engagement through long-range sensors, watching in stunned disbelief as a single human ship systematically dismantled an organization that had defied their combined fleets for half a century. Ambassador Zektar's voice, when he finally managed to speak, carried none of its previous arrogance. "Captain Voss, how your ship was listed as a courier vessel." "Paperwork error," Voss replied blandly. "Happens all the time. Are we in?" There was a long pause, filled with the sound of a dozen different species trying to process what they'd just witnessed. When Zektar spoke again, his tone was very different from the one he'd used when discussing humanity's primitive capabilities. "The Galactic Council unanimously approves humanity's application for full membership. Welcome to the community of civilized species." "Honored to be here," Voss replied. "Oh, and Council? You might want to update your files on human military capabilities. We've been holding back." As the ship that bore no official name turned toward home, carrying news of humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization, the crew reflected on what they'd accomplished. They'd eliminated one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminal organizations, saved countless innocent lives, and secured their species' place among the stars. But, more than that, they'd sent a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity might be young, primitive, and small compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the stars, but they brought something new to the cosmic community. They brought the concept of absolute justice for those who chose to prey on the innocent. They brought the understanding that some threats could only be eliminated by those willing to become temporary monsters. They brought the Baba Yaga, and the galaxy would never be the same. Years later, when criminal organizations gathered in dark places to plan their activities, they would speak in whispers of the ship that had no name and the humans who crewed it. They would tell stories of perfect hunters who came in the dark for those who hurt innocent people. And sometimes, very rarely, those stories would be enough to make them choose a different path. Because even monsters, it turned out, could learn to fear the boogeyman. The Council had mocked Earth's outlaws, expecting them to fail against impossible odds. Instead, they'd witnessed the birth of something that would haunt the galaxy's nightmares and protect its dreams for generations to come.